Our little journey here as we keep things going on a Tuesday morning. And as I advertised, Mark Holbrook with me here this morning. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning, Jim. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
And I mean that, really.
There's not many people that honestly do mean that, but I'm just kidding right now. Always good to see any of the Holbrook clan, and you're one of them. You're kind of the unique Holbrook of the bunch, and that's saying something because that's a pretty unique family.
They're all unique in their own way.
Yeah, you are all unique in your own way. There's no doubt about that. What an amazing family. Well, for anybody that has not really followed you or been following you here recently, let's give them a little history as we chit-chat a little bit today, because I thought you can hang around for a little while with me today, because
yeah.
Dynamite, for the entire 10 o'clock hour. Can I twist your arm?
Sure, yeah.
You have a coffee or lunch gig that you got to do?
I've got an appointment at noon, but until like 11:30, I'm good.
There you go. That sounds
that gives
like a
me
deal.
time.
We'll spend a little time. We'll play a little music, and I really do want people to know what you're up to, because I think it's a very interesting subject that most people are not all that aware of. So we'll take our time and work our way through it, and play some
Sure.
music, and have a little fun here with Mark Holbrook over the course of the next hour. Mark, for everybody that really has not been following you here recently, you have taken on the task of working with some folks outside of this country. Okay. And we're going to get to that in just a second, but let's first of all tell them where you are in the United States and what you're doing, and then let's let them know what you're doing outside of the country. How's that?
Okay. Well, my wife and I pastored a church here in Bryan for 15 years, New Life Worship Center, a place that at one time my dad had pastored for 21 years. And then my sister and her husband had also pastored there, which is kind of an interesting thing because it's a denominational church. So the congregation decided that they wanted 3 generations of Holbrooks to pastor there, which is
amazing.
Kind of an unusual thing, but pretty cool. But about a year and a half ago, we stepped away from pastoring to focus more on doing charitable work and missions work in East Africa. And so my time here in the U.S., a lot of that is spent raising awareness and raising funds because we've got a lot of big dreams and big goals, and they come sometimes with big price tags. And so just
Sure.
to make people aware of that and to connect with folks. So we get out, try to connect with civic organizations and any groups, any clubs in the area. If you're looking for a speaker to come in and talk to your group, we would be happy to hear from you.
Wow, that is intriguing. How did you come about this? I mean, were you called to do this? Is this something that just happened while you're sitting at your house on a Sunday morning watching TV? How did all this come about, Mark?
Well, actually, 9 years ago this month, I went with a team from several different churches, different denominations, people that may not be directly connected with any church, but we went over to East Africa to do some work there. We visited a couple of orphanages, did some things there, and also we were doing some teaching at a conference in the little town of Mwingi. Yeah, don't try to spell it, just, yeah.
Mwingi.
Yeah.
Mwingi, okay.
But we went there, and at first I was kind of hesitant to go. And I just thought, I'm not sure that this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm not sure that I want to do it.
Okay.
But I really, the more I thought about it and prayed about it, the more I thought, I'm supposed to be a part of this team. And I thought this was a one-off. I'm going to check it off the list.
Sure.
I did that. I'm done. I'll focus on something else. And when I came home from that, actually 9 years ago this month, when I went, I came home and realized that my heart had connected with that place and the people there. And the rest is history. I've been going back somewhat regularly. Initially, it was every year and a half or so.
Okay.
And then it's kind of picked up steam, and I realized 2 or 3 years ago that this is what I'm supposed to focus on.
Sure. Explain to the folks listening right now what Mwingi?
Mwingi.
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 Okay, Mwingi. It looks like if we walked into downtown Mwingi right now, okay, what would we see?
Well, Mwingi is east of Nairobi, which is the capital of Kenya.
Okay.
And Kenya is several times larger than the state of Ohio, so the climate it has a little bit of diversity to it. It's not a one picture that you see.
Okay.
So in that side of Kenya, it tends to be more arid and dry, closer to what you might see in some of the southwest states.
Okay.
So it tends to be dusty, tends to be dry. If you're there right after it rains, things look green, and then in the non-rainy season, things start to dry out and look kind of brown, and everything looks dead. But there are about 5,000 people in this town.
Wow. Okay, so it's a town a little smaller than Bryan.
Yeah, by population.
By population, right?
It's a lot of it is agricultural around the area. A lot of farmers who are basically subsistence farmers who grow just a little bit more than what their family needs, and then they use that excess to barter and trade to get the things that they can't grow.
Okay.
But there are a lot of people that travel through the town because there are other things past there that people are traveling to. And so there's a little bit of a downtown business district.
Okay.
There are a couple of hotels there. And the people working at the hotels, because I'm just bold enough to ask, when I've been there and doing things, I've been in that town several times, I'll talk to the people that work at the hotel where I stay and get to be friends with just the average workers, the people that do housekeeping, the people that wait the tables in the little restaurant. And so I'll ask them, if you don't mind, how much do you make?
Right.
What do you earn? And many of those people, the last time I was in that town a couple of years ago, they were making about $1 a day.
Wow. Okay. And able to survive and provide for themselves.
Barely.
Okay.
They would rent a small room somewhere in town so that they could get to work, and their room would cost them about $17 a month.
Okay.
So they have about $13 a month to live on, everything else that they need. And so just amazing when you think about how people live and what we call necessities.
Yes.
That to them are a distant dream. Wow, wouldn't it be nice to have that pair of shoes, or wouldn't it be nice to have that new cell phone? And it's so far beyond what's reasonable or possible for them that it's just a completely different level.
That's amazing. That's taking us back into the 1800s around here, just as far as money in people's pockets, but as far as goods and services, even farther back than what we would expect for our great-great-grandparents to have,
Well, at the same time, there are people living in this town that either one of us would consider wealthy.
Oh, wow, really?
And the Kenya has so much contradiction. There is the most beautiful scenic wildlife areas and everything you can imagine. When you think of animals on National Geographic, and you think of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, a lot of those pictures that we all saw growing up were taken in Kenya, and there are still those places there.
Okay.
They're protected. When you see pictures of the wildebeest migration crossing the Mara River, that's in Kenya. And so those places are still there, and you can see those. And then you have these bustling cities. Nairobi is like a financial and a business capital, the hub for all of East Africa.
Sure. Okay.
And so it's in places very modern, and in other places, one of the biggest slums on the continent of Africa is in Nairobi.
Okay.
The Kibera slums. Absolutely unbelievable. Just driving past it, you can, as you look across this hillside, you can tell that it's a slum. It has a distinctly different look from anything else in the city. And even from a mile or 2 miles away, as you drive down this major highway that goes past it, you can smell it before you see it.
Oh, gosh.
If you're not looking at it, you can tell there's a difference. And it's not like it's going to make you throw up, but there's just a different odor in the air, and you know something changed. And so all of these contradictions, incredibly wealthy people next to slums, and virtually across the street from each other at times. Nairobi is the only nation whose capital city, or Kenya is the only nation whose capital city has a wildlife park within the borders of the city.
Okay.
So the Nairobi National Park is completely inside the city of Nairobi. So you can sit at one of the most beautiful restaurants in Nairobi, which after the the bombing back in the 90s where our embassy was taken down.
Right.
This hotel was taken over by the U.S. Department of State and was the acting U.S. embassy until they built a new one.
Okay.
But anyway, so a friend of mine took me. I honestly, at times, it's more than what I would normally pay to eat here in some of the restaurants, the high end. I had a friend of mine take me there, and we're sitting on the second floor deck overlooking the national park while we ate our supper with antelope and giraffe and zebra in the distance, and we're watching them eat while they're watching us eat. It was surreal.
That is surreal. Mark Holbrook is our guest here today. It's 22 after 10 o'clock. He's going to hang with me the entire hour, and we're talking a little bit about his efforts in Africa right now. So Mark will be with us here for a little bit, but Mark, as they probably do in Kenya too, we got to pay our bills every now
Pay
and
the
then.
bills.
So I'm going to do that exactly right now. We'll play another song. We'll get back and talk a little more about why you're really in Africa and what you're doing and what your love and focus is here at this point. 22 after 10 with the Q 96.5 FM.
On principles like hard work, perseverance, and overcoming.
10:30 here in the queue, and if you're going to watch this here in a little bit, you'll be able to see that I have transformed. I've got a video that we're putting together up on our YouTube channel live from the Funderdome at this point in time. I think most people have recognized that one. I normally don't use this camera, Mark, but you know, I figured I'd let people know that since you came in, I dressed accordingly today, well, just to make you feel welcome.
Nothing is normal when you have a Holbrook in the studio, so
no doubt about that. For folks that are watching and will watch this this YouTube stream that we're preparing right now, explain to them what you have me dressed in. What you know, I normally don't wear this in. If they know me, they know I'm normally in a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, even in the winter time. But today I'm more properly adorned here, I think, huh?
Well, I brought in a couple of the things that I've been given as gifts when I've been visiting different areas, especially well outside of the cities in Kenya. I have a number of friends of mine who are members of the Maasai tribe. Mm-hmm. They're the legendary people. When you think of Africa and you picture that in your head, you're probably picturing a Maasai warrior.
Sure.
But they wear the colorful beads and the colorful blankets or fabric that they drape themselves with as clothing. So Jim is wearing two authentic Maasai necklaces. The one in particular, the longer one, was actually taken off the neck of a Maasai warrior. Personally took them off and put them on me and gave them to me as a gift back in 2014.
Wow.
And then the blanket as well, they call that a shuka.
Okay.
And so that's what they wear. That's how they wear them. They tie two corners together and it's draped over. So
it appears to me you might have a few problems with your shuka every now and then. You know what I mean?
Well, they figured out how to keep them where they want them, and they usually wear a couple of them and have other, you know, clothing. Sometimes they'll wear more like what we would consider shorts or gym shorts and a T-shirt underneath all that.
Okay.
So, you know, if the wind blows, your shuka doesn't leave you exposed, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt about that. But I'm sure there are traditionalists over there that will just wear this. I mean, this is the traditional garb.
Yeah,
without
but
underneath of it.
They would wear at least a light cloth wrapped around their midsection, or possibly two of the shukas, one from each shoulder.
Okay.
That way, you know, they're pretty well covered.
There is a sense of decency that does, you know, transcend all people of all worlds. You know, we know there's very few of us that like to walk around buck naked too often anymore.
Well,
you know?
but they also understand nature.
Okay. All right.
And so it's not uncommon if you're walking down the street, especially in the rural areas, if someone needs to use the restroom, they'll just step off the side of the road and water a tree.
Okay.
And no one thinks anything of it because everybody has to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And it's not really considered indecent.
Right.
And for women to feed their children in public,
right.
I've been in churches and in other very public settings where, you know, if a mother and child are there and she needs to feed her child, she just feeds it.
Sure.
And no one stares, no one thinks anything of it. And so there are a few of those attitudes that are quite different there from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But nothing that's, you know, horrible or obscene. It's just the culture's a little different.
Yeah. Mark Holbrook is our guest, and we're talking about his ministry. I think you'd call it a ministry still.
Yeah.
Even though you're not standing in a pulpit every Sunday like you did for a number of years. I think this is still an outreach that is basically drawn to you from some spiritual level, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
So do we call it a ministerial outreach, or what do we call your project? How do you describe it?
Well, I really see that what we're doing is having two focuses.
Okay.
Some of what we do is direct ministry, where we are in churches over there preaching and teaching, helping to teach and train pastors, and doing things that are clearly ministry related. And then some of the other things that we're doing are much more charitable and humanitarian efforts. And so we've kind of divided the two. I found that there are some people that are perfectly at peace with both of those coexisting, and others don't want to help fund or don't want to give to a religious entity, but the charitable organization that we founded, because of the way that it operates, they're willing to help us with that.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay.
Because you have a situation now while you're back in the United States where you're out making speeches, asking for money, looking to drum up help for a group of people that are in need. So let's start there, I guess. The need in that area of Kenya, you say it's a very arid part of the country.
Well, the place that we were working about, that I was talking to you a little off air, is different from Wingi. It's a different area, but it's still very dry, very arid there. Actually, the place is called Sampet.
Okay.
Sampet is so small you can't find it on a map.
All right.
The closest place to it that you can find on a map is called Oloitokitok. So I'll spell that for you later. But Sampet is at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro.
Okay.
So we went down there in February. Even though it wasn't a project that we helped raise funds for, we were able to go because of our partners in Kenya. We went as part of a team when they built a simple 2-room schoolhouse, the very first school that was ever in this village. And so it's just an elementary school. They have 32 elementary age kids enrolled in that school today. But our backdrop for 3 days was Kilimanjaro.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dear God. I mean, it's like a bucket list item for me to check off to stand at the foot of the mountain. The mountain is actually in Tanzania, so we were right at the border of the two countries. I could have walked, within 5 minutes, I could have crossed the border on foot from where we were at.
Wow. So
it's incredibly beautiful. The landscape is just magnificent, and all of our pictures with the mountain as a backdrop, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we were there. We helped build this school, and the place is very dry. They've been having a drought, and since I left, that hadn't changed. The drought has continued, and so here we are, 8 or 9 months later, and I'm hearing word from the people in the village and the teachers in that school that the drought is now going into its 3rd year.
Oh, gosh.
And it is rivaling some of the worst droughts in their history. And when the U.S. heard about Band-Aid and Feed the World and Do They Know It's Christmas down in Africa and all of the public awareness that came at a time when there was a horrible drought in that region, this drought is on that same scale.
Oh, wow.
But it's getting much less international attention. So the teachers are telling us these children are coming to school, and because the area, they're just farmers. They're subsistence farmers. These kids are coming to school, and they're not eating regularly at home. So many of them are coming to school hungry, and we have nothing to feed them while they're at school, and so we send them home knowing that they're not going to eat regularly at home. They may have, in a 7-day period, they may have food for 4 or 5 days, and then have 2 or 3 days a week that they're not eating, or more than that sometimes. It varies a little bit from family to family, but it's just not good. So they were asking, could you help us to feed these children for a 3-month period?
Okay.
And we're saying, okay, what would it cost to feed them for a 3-month period? And we broke it down and did the analysis. It would have been less than 18 cents per meal for each of these children.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Man, I mean, that's like crazy. For $1, I can provide 5 meals.
Right.
And have change left.
Right.
It's almost stupid to think about.
Right.
And basic stuff, beans, rice, maize, or they take the maize or the corn and they grind it down and make what we would consider a variation of grits. If you've been from the South, I got some Southern roots. I love me some grits, but they make what tastes like grits. It's a lot thicker. They can pick it up and eat it with their fingers. There's no spoon involved with that, but it's the same stuff basically. So a very simple diet. And so we said, man, that's great. For about $1,000, we can provide 2 meals a day for these kids at this school for 3 months.
Wow.
And then we're going to just pray and hope and believe that the rains come on schedule when they're supposed to, and then they'll be able to grow their own food. That's what they want to do.
Right.
So anyways, in looking at that and thinking, we could probably do that. We could raise $1,000 and feed those kids. And then I started thinking, what about everybody else in this village? There are 425 people. We've got less than 10% of them attending this school. What about the rest of these people? They have younger siblings that aren't in school. They have older siblings, junior high and high school, that maybe the parents can't afford to send them to a boarding school, which is their only educational option. The parents, grandparents, adults that don't have children. I mean, all of those people are in the same boat.
Wow.
Women who are pregnant, and all of these things. What do we do about them?
Right.
You know, it takes a little of the burden off the family if you're feeding these kids,
Sure.
but you've got the rest of these people that aren't eating either.
Right.
And, you know, maybe we can't provide everything that they need for a 3-month period, but what would it take to supplement that so it balances that out a little bit for them and gets them through this? And so we began to talk to them, and we figured out for about $10 per person in that village that we could fill in the gaps that they had.
Okay.
And that's almost ridiculous to think about. For $10, you can help ensure that somebody over there in this remote village is going to eat for 3 months.
Yeah, that is hard to imagine. Is this widespread throughout this area in Africa, or is it?
It
just
is
a region to
It
Africa
is.
itself?
It is regional as far as East Africa,
Okay.
which there are 6 nations, but the areas that tend to be a little arid to begin with obviously suffer more.
Sure.
The areas that get less rain, it's much more noticeable when they don't get any or get way too little. And so that was the situation here. You know, their livestock are starving and dying. Everything is dry. I mean, I've got pictures on my Facebook page that I'll share with you if you want to repost any of them.
Sure, I would love to.
But then what's really cool, I also have pictures over the last several weeks where we have 3 or 4 times sent a shipment of food into this village through our friends that are there. We've got people on the ground in Kenya that we work with, that we've built relationships with, that we know we can trust. There's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of people that aren't trustworthy.
Sure, that's what I was going to ask you about too. Yeah,
I've found people that I would literally trust with my life over there, and there are other situations where we've been involved in some things. Maybe we'll get into in another segment. But these people have earned that trust. They've proven themselves trustworthy. And if I send $1,000 over there, they send me pictures of what they're doing with it and provide receipts. There's accountability. There's partnership. They're looking for an ongoing relationship to help their country and not to take advantage of somebody who wants to throw money at a problem.
Yeah, well, and that so often is something that concerns
Right.
you when you're writing a check for a charity of some
Well,
sort.
and we're not a huge charity.
Sure.
So the funds that we're raising and the funds that we have do have limits, and we want to be as effective as possible. And so we want to provide that accountability. And so we have to have that from the people that we work with, and then we want to be accountable to the people that are supporting what we're doing.
Sure.
I want to be able to demonstrate to them that we're making the best possible use of your gift.
Yeah.
We're not wasting any of this.
Right.
And so I'm able to get pictures back every time they go in and take a shipment of food and see what they're doing and see them distributing it, and even to have a live video chat via WhatsApp, if you're familiar with WhatsApp.
Sure.
And to talk to these people that I met in February in this village, and to see their faces and to interact with them thousands of miles apart, and know that what we're sending, I mean, literally, when I send money over there for a shipment of food, within 48 hours, they're delivering food to this
arrives.
village.
Yeah, wonderful.
4 or 5 hours outside of Nairobi.
Wow, that is amazing. Mark Holbrook is my guest right now. We're going to keep him around for the rest of the hour today. We're talking about the outreach work he does outside of the country in Kenya, and we will talk a little more to Mark right after this here on the Q 96.5 FM.
If you're a pro, you don't buy
B&M Tire and Service in Bryant.
Mark Holbrook with us here to remain to the top of the hour at 11 o'clock here this morning. So I want to get to a couple things because it's always intriguing. I think anybody that is listening right now has to be somewhat intrigued by what you're up to. I don't know that any of us really understand Africa itself. It's a big continent. There's the diversity of the continent, I think, initially would take most people by surprise.
Incredibly diverse.
Yeah. Because you think of it as just one big open area with all herds of lions and tigers and everything else roaming the bushes and everything. But it is evolving and growing just like the rest of the world, basically.
It really is. And in fact, in Kenya, they're taking steps because they want to be a little bigger player in the world economics and world politics and all of that. So when they passed a new constitution in the last few years, one of the things in the constitution says that the official language of business and government is English.
Okay, all right.
And even though Swahili is the predominant language in that region, there are several nations that's the primary language. They realized if they wanted to participate in economics and all of that, they had to speak or utilize one of the primary world languages. And being a former British colony, it made the most sense for them to use English, which was kind of a second language before.
Sure.
And so increasingly, I can go more and more. It's amazing the difference I've seen in 9 years, how I can go places now without an interpreter that I could not have gone without an interpreter 9 years ago.
Isn't that amazing? It seems like the rest of the world picks up on English a lot quicker than we pick up on whatever, name the language.
Well, for me it's Swahili, and I have not picked up on nearly as much as I would like to, but I'm learning. So.
Is it a difficult language? Is it most people, I would think English would be very difficult for most people to pick up.
English is a fairly difficult language.
Yes.
But interestingly, there are a lot of people over there, even the Kenyans, that are learning Chinese. The Chinese have done a lot of work in Kenya, making major investments. There are Chinese companies coming in and doing major building projects. They're doing a lot of infrastructure in Nairobi, building superhighways. The traffic, oh dear God, the traffic is something else. But they're building a superhighway that will go all the way around the city of Nairobi and then go into other major cities from there, just to alleviate the traffic and congestion in the city. It'll be great when it's done, but in the meantime, it's worse.
Yeah.
But there are Chinese companies doing all of that construction.
Isn't that amazing?
And the number of Chinese people you see there is pretty amazing. But you see a lot of people that are of Indian or Pakistani descent. And you see Sikh temples in the middle of this African country. You see these huge, beautiful, ornate Sikh temples. Wow. Because the British brought in people to help build railroads and infrastructure 200 years ago.
Okay.
And those people, many of their descendants are still there. So they're natural-born Kenyans, but they're not Africans by descent. They've maintained their culture within a culture.
In a time where part of our world wants to pull in the reins and be a little closer and not reach out to other parts of the world is coming, whether you like it or not. It seems like,
Well, but they utilize that because it suits what they need right now.
Sure.
They need the Chinese investment in Kenya, and they also need the Chinese ability to build infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so it serves them well. In fact, I think there are times when the United States kind of neglects opportunities by not being more actively involved in some of those countries where we could have more influence in different ways that would be to our benefit in geopolitical situations and discussions rather than. But the Chinese, they want to be a superpower. In fact, they would like to displace us as the leading superpower. And they're actively working on that behind the scenes. So we'll see what happens.
So we better be aware.
Just to be aware of that. And many people aren't aware of how China is going into other countries like that and having an influence.
Sure. Amazing. That is amazing. Mark Holbrook, my guest, and Mark, we have a little bit of time left, about 8 minutes or so before we hit the top of the hour, and I want to get back into the to the need that is over there, because we talked about the school and we talked about food. Okay, those are two issues that you always are in constant need of resources for, money for, to be
Absolutely.
able to keep those things going. I guess how is the school going, and the needs there for dollars to go along with the need for obvious food for people who are starving to death?
Well, we have, through my wife and I established a nonprofit organization. We had been working to adopt a child from Kenya for several years, and that fell through. We'd been raising money to help with the adoption expenses, so we had a pool of money that was designated that we no longer had a place to put it.
Sure.
And so we contacted all of those donors. Anybody, I think it was anybody that had donated more than $20. If we were able to track that and figure out who sent it, we sent them a letter or called them personally and said, would you like us to return the unused portion of that to you?
Right.
Or would you allow us to roll that into a new charitable organization that will be doing work in Kenya and East Africa? And all but one of those donors said, please take that money and use it for a purpose that's consistent with our heart when we gave it.
Right.
So we started out with this fund, and we created the Acacia Alliance. The acacia is the tree. If you think of the tree you see on the African savanna, when everything else is brown, the acacia is there in green. And so we kind of chose that as a symbol. And we purchased a piece of property in the city of Kisii next to an existing orphanage. And we're raising money to build a school there. Now, the school that we were there when it was constructed in Sampet is a very simple wood frame with just sheet metal wrapped around it. Incredibly simple. It has gravel for a floor.
Okay.
Nothing fancy. The school that we're looking to build in Kisii will be a block structure. It will be, when it's done, potentially as much as 6 or 7 stories tall.
Wow.
It'll have a community center in the bottom so that we can rent space to people in the community, and that will serve as a multi-purpose room for the school as it operates. And the goal is to give scholarships to all of the orphans in this orphanage next to it.
Okay.
Right now, the orphanage is housing about 1/3 of their capacity because they're paying school fees for these kids. And the director of the orphanage, I asked, I said, what would happen if you didn't have to pay school fees? And he said, we would start identifying more orphans and bring them in.
Sure.
And I said, well, then let's see what we can do to get a school running here that we can scholarship those kids, and then he would fill up the rest of this facility that he's got with kids and get them off the street.
And when you're looking at dollars for a scholarship, what's a scholarship for a child in a school like that? Just roughly, even.
It would be probably in the neighborhood of $1,500 a year.
Okay. All right.
For an average student.
And we look and think of colleges, I guess, around here that are now 25,000 and up. All right.
Or even a private school before college.
Heck yeah.
Go to a private school.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, even
like,
if you
St. Pat's,
right here
we have St. Pat's, we have Fountain City Christian School.
Exactly.
You know, there are a couple of private schools.
They do a wonderful job.
Yeah, they're great.
You bet.
And it's a nice alternative for parents who choose that. And I think both are great schools.
Yes.
I was on the board for Fountain City Christian School for 2 years.
Heck yeah.
And so, man, I believe in what they're doing. They're doing a great job. But it's expensive.
Yeah.
And so for a lot less than that, and not to minimize the value of that, but we can educate one of these kids. And so our goal is to build a school that will accommodate roughly 3 or 4 times as many kids in total as would be living in the orphanage. So the kids in the community that can afford to pay, we're going to give them a high quality education that their parents want to pay top dollar for, and let that fund the orphans and the kids in this home to be able to come in and not have to pay.
Wow.
And so we want to get it to a point where it's self-sustaining, because even though I don't consider myself old, I know that all of us are going to die at some point.
Right.
So I want to structure this so it's not reliant on a constant influx of cash from the U.S. to keep it operating, but it's self-sustaining once it's going.
Yeah.
It's a little more expensive to get it running that way because you have to build bigger than what you need just for the orphans.
Sure. Sure.
But
all of a sudden, you do have a St. Pat's or a Christian school sitting there that people, as you said, want to send their children to, are willing to pay for.
Right. And so the locals that can afford it will want to send their kids there.
Yeah.
And then the orphans can go for free, and it's self-sustaining and would require little or no cash from the U.S. on an ongoing basis to keep it operating.
Somebody that wants to donate this, listen to us here now for this past hour, and it's touched their heart the way it touched your heart. How do they contact you, or how do they get in touch with somebody that they can make a donation?
Well, you can call me.
Okay.
And I would be happy to talk to you. Actually, we're looking to get into places in the area. If you're a part of the Rotary Club or any of those organizations that do regular meetings and want a speaker, I'll come in. Getting me to talk usually isn't the problem.
No doubt. You're old, Brooke.
My phone number is 419-551-0520.
Okay.
And then on our website and Facebook, the Acacia Alliance. Acacia is ACACIA.
Okay. ACACIA.
ACA. CIA.
ACACIA. Okay.
And go to Acacia Alliance on Facebook. AcaciaAlliance.org is our website, and or I'm on Facebook. You can find me and find a link to the Acacia Alliance.
Now, if you were up on that site, can you choose at that point to donate to the school or to the people who are in need of food?
There is a donate now button, and I believe it gives you the option of making a note.
Okay.
And so if you say, I want it, in fact, with the school that we're getting ready to build, we're asking people that want to sponsor a classroom.
Okay. Okay.
And we've had people that have begun to do that. For $5,000, you can sponsor a classroom that will be a part of a permanent structure. This is a solid block building. It'll outlast all of us.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And we'll put a plaque on the outside of that so you can name the room in memory or in honor of someone, and it'll be a constant memorial to that person or to a family or whatever, an organization. If there's a group, a church, a civic group that says, you know what, we want to, from whatever club from Bryan, Ohio or Williams County, we want to sponsor a classroom for these kids.
Fantastic. Mark Holbrook has been our guest here today at Straight Up 11 o'clock. As always, it's a pleasure having you.
It's a joy. Always good to see you, Jim.
You will have to come back again and update us. When do you expect to start construction? Any feel for that?
It's all dependent on finances.
Okay.
If somebody writes me a check for the full amount, we'll start construction tomorrow.
What's the full amount?
For that school to do everything that we need to do is going to be in the neighborhood of $300,000 or $325,000 in total.
Sure.
But they build in segments there, so we can build 2 or 3 floors and actually begin having classes, and so we could actually have a school that was a little smaller but functional for about $125,000, and then we would add a floor at a time as the remainder of the funds came in.
Yeah, it makes sense to do it that way as well. And for folks that want to donate to the starving people that you're trying to help at this point in time, one more time, your phone number and also your website so they can call if they didn't get it down the first time.
Phone number 419-551-0520, and through Facebook and our website, Acacia is spelled ACACIA. So it's acaciaalliance.org or the Acacia Alliance on Facebook. There's a donate now button. Could not be easier.
Piece of cake. No doubt about that. Thank you, Mark, for your time and all the effort that you're making, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, top of the hour, 11:01 here at the Q 96.5 FM. Back into Classic Hits.
From 3 decades, the all-new